Hello and welcome. My name is Slegaitis-Smith, and this is a channel where we like to talk about writing, learning, and creating. Today is part 3 and the final installment of a character building project that we have been working on. If you have not yet done parts 1 and 2, please go and do those before you come to this video. The links will be in the cards. That way we can all be on the same page as we enter the last leg of this journey together. Welcome back, everyone. This is part 3 in our character building series, just to go over what we have already accomplished, and also links will be available for seeing the first few parts of this. We've already built the appearance and some basic description of our characters, some personality aspects, their preferences, and today we're going to be digging into their background, their traits, and things like that. So we're going to go right ahead and get started with background, and the first part of background is talking about their birthplace. Now this may or may not be the same place that they are living now, because sometimes you're born one place and then your family quickly moves to another place for a lot of reasons, like maybe there was like war or whatever. So in the case of my character, Auntie Ida, she was born in Kionga, and that was a very war-torn place, and so her family ended up having to flee that area. They left as she was a child when the town was destroyed by the war. So because of the war, she had to leave her home. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big negative reason for your character to have left their hometown, their birthplace, but their birthplace and their hometown might be different. So a hometown is different in the sense that it is where you grew up. Her current hometown, and where she's been since she grew up, is called Ethono. It's also the current setting for my story. All completely made up names. One of the fun things about fantasy, you're coming up with your own place. You can do whatever. Alright, the next section is significant childhood event. So what is significant for your character's childhood doesn't have to be some big crazy thing, but it can be as well. So for her, it's obviously going to be her running away from the Bareki soldiers, who were the ones who were attacking her birthplace town, and the fact that she had to flee. But something that might be a significant childhood event for your character could be a positive thing too. Oh, and actually that makes sense for all the way back in video 1, I mentioned her brother Kaide I planned on him being passed away, and it makes sense that he actually died because of them fleeing from that hometown. Ooh, see, this is the come together points that we make the characters for, so that we find out this piece of information that can be like really integral to who that person is as a person, so it makes it even more of a significant event. And then down in this section, I said that large clouds made her nervous, and I didn't really have a good reason for it, but that also kind of connects to the whole, like, her being put into a different location. The paranoia about running away from those soldiers, it just makes sense. For her education, I previously mentioned it as well, that she is in a social class and a special group for this world that would put her at a lower standing, which also would put limits on her education opportunities. So for her, I'm going to say that she was limited to a middle school level education because of the joint status of her being both a Jesson and an Avery, which is all part of the world building section versus the character building section. But we'd already gone over what those terms mean in the previous video. When you're making a religion, it can be either a real one or a fictional one, depending on what setting you are going for. For my story, I have fictional religions that I'm using, so she is a Taurian follower. So once again, that's more in the world building side of things, so we don't need to go into real depths here, but make sure that you follow through, because if your person is a very religious person, it will affect them. The next one is significant family relationship. We all tend to have like one person in our family that we are closer to than others, and it's okay if there isn't one, but it might be important for figuring out what the situation is for your character. So I'm going to definitely be mentioning her brother who died while escaping from their homeland, to connect all of those details finally together that we've been working on as we've been building this character together. So yeah, that would be pretty significant. The next category is early friendships. The reason why early friendships are important is because it relates to the type of people who they are going to be attracted to throughout their life. Not necessarily romantically attracted, but like who they like to be around and who they don't like to be around. And often our early friendships are very formational for us, so it can be a really important thing to consider when you are making your character. For Auntie Ida, I'm going to say that her first friend was Genoa, and I'm going to list that the traits that attracted her to this person was that Genoa was a very kind and strong person. So that fits in with the fact that she also has this part of her ideal self that is a kind and strong person. And then her other early friendship is Boe, who was very smart and empathetic, would also end up being very huge parts of her character as well. So that's how early friendships can tie in and why they might be important for adding them into your character. The next part is the relationship with authorities. This is their personal relationship with authority, which can be affected by like having negative engagements with authority figures or a positive engagement with authority figures. This can both be people who are just like in charge, but this is also a relationship with like police type people. So I'm going to say that she's rather contrary to authority figures because she is skeptical of the goodwill of people in authority, partially or particularly if they were or are part of the Boreki military, because of her background with the Boreki military and having to run away from her homeland. Obviously she was like having to dodge and run away from these authority figures. Our next category is traits, and the first trait that we are going to be looking at is the pessimist/optimist side of the traits, where we are going to be trying to understand our characters through that lens of what makes them a pessimist or an optimist. So I'm going to say that Auntie Ida is definitely an optimist. Optimism does not mean that you are not world-wise. Like, you can be very world-wise and still be optimistic. So when you're applying that to your character, consider that. The next category is introvert versus extrovert. Remember, this is about where your character is getting their energy from. Do they get their energy from being alone or from being with people? That does not mean that your introvert can't be with people, and that does not mean your extrovert can't be alone and be perfectly happy. It's just where they get their energy from. So Auntie Ida definitely strikes me as being like an introverted person. She's just very content with being alone and with her plants, so that seems to fit her pretty well. Alright, your next category is talents. So talents are like the party trick type category, like what is something random that this person that is able to do that in some way may or may not be significant to your story. So for Auntie Ida, I would say random talents that she has would include baking and playing the chose course it corrects my made-up spelling. Why wouldn't it? Chose, which is an instrument that I invented for this world that I have created, which is kind of like the Chinese eru. It's inspired by that instrument. So these can end up being significant to your story. Once again, it just depends on how you put them in. The next category is motivations, which is like a big category as far as importance for your character. Every single character is going to have motivations, and everything that you've written previously is going to help you figure out what their motivations are, particularly their priorities and their philosophies. So you can go back and look those over as well. It's one of the reasons why this category is later, because you definitely need that other information first. So after everything that I've written about her, it's very obvious that her motivation for doing things in this story is going to be helping people to avoid suffering, so that they don't have to deal with the hurts that she did. So she knows suffering, she went through some really hard times, and she doesn't want people to have to experience the same pain. So that's going to be her motivation in every scene and every aspect of the story that she is a part of. And that's why it's so important to know that, because you can have multiple characters with very different motivations. Alright, our next category is accomplishments. You can think of this like winning the spelling bee type scenario. It doesn't have to be a super big accomplishment. It can just be something that they feel accomplished in doing. So for her, it would be running a successful florist shop. Because for her, that is a mark of accomplishment with all the stuff that she had to go through, and her family ended up losing everything, and also her social status and being just in an agri where things are just working against her. That makes it something that feels very accomplished to her, even though not everybody would find it as big of an accomplishment. The next type is personality, the next category, rather, is personality type. This is one that you can kind of play around with and have fun with. If you are the type of person who really likes personality quizzes, this is actually something that I started doing for some of my characters because I thought it was fun, because I like taking those quizzes for nonsense reasons. So basically just take a random personality quiz, whatever type of personality quiz you like, and then you can put that information in here. It's also a good way to double check that you're not like reproducing the same type of character all the time, because that's one of the things we have to worry about as writers, is if we're just like recreating the same character over and over again and just giving them different names. So taking a personality quiz where you're answering the questions as that character, like what that character would say, it can, one, help you to learn that character better, and two, help you to double check that you are actually making people who think differently and would act differently and therefore are more individual people. So I did the quiz for Auntie Ida, and she ended up being an INFPT, which is also called a mediator, and I feel like that fits her pretty well, because she would be someone who would be very good at like mediating between people with her skills and her desire to help people. And something that proves that it's different from my own personality type is that I am not an INFP. So I'm not just recreating me, which is also a good thing to know. The next category is quirks. So for her, I'm going to say one of her quirks is gardening analogies, because I kind of already created that as a quirk for her earlier in our last one, when we were talking about her colloquialisms and idioms, and also her personal philosophies, I believe it was. Goodness, can't find things. Yeah, philosophies. She kind of was using gardening analogies and how I was developing her as a character. She was kind of using gardening philosophies and how I was describing her character, so it makes sense. So remember, quirks are just kind of like those random things that your character does that makes them stand out and be different from other people. It doesn't have to be like weird, it doesn't have to be bad, it's just something that makes them stand out a bit more. Another one that I'm going to give her, which is a little bit more odd, is that she has a twitch on her left side in her face and hand. that is aggravated by stress, because usually if someone has like a twitch, it usually does get aggravated by stress, and there are a ton of different reasons why she might have a twitch. It could be a medical issue, it could be a mental thing, so that's another thing that I can build into her character that may or may not be significant when it comes to the actual plot of the story. And the last section for this category is alignment. This is going back to the video that I did on character development, where I discussed how you can use systems that already exist to help you govern what kind of choices your character would make. And in particular, I referenced how D&D has an alignment system that helps people who are role-playing for the first time figure out how to play a character who is different from themselves. So for Auntie Ida, she would fall into the neutral good category of alignment as described by D&D, although you can find a couple of different ways that the terms are put out there. So basically what this means is that she will generally make choices that are good, as in what you would be like, that's a good person because of that choice that they made, but they're also neutral in the sense that they might bend rules a little bit to accomplish that good, or they might stay very much on the straight and narrow for being good and making those good choices. So the alignment can just really help you figure out how this character is relating to other people and how you can write them better and more authentic to who they are. And there we go, we've done it. We made a completely new character together. I hope that you had fun on this journey. If you did complete this character using this planner or a different type of planner, I would love to be able to see what you came up with. If you took that personality quiz for your character, leave that in the comment section below. I think it would be cool to find out all the different personality types that the characters we came up with have.
I've had a blast working on these characters with you, and I can't wait to see your full and final piece. If you would like information on how you can share that with our group, check out the links in the descriptions. Everything you need to know will be right there and waiting for you. If you enjoyed this project, make sure to put a like on this video so that I know that you would like to continue doing these types of things. Other than that, have a fantastic rest of your day and a great one until the next one.